Everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Me and Wilson Zia Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Me and Wilson Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, now on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and the Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with his latest All of Me, new music coming soon. EricDiamondMusic.com. Follow on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and more. We're here with a terrific gentleman who is an author, professor of creative writing at George Washington University. He also created a class called The Working Writer, regular contributor to various national publications, including Washington Post, also Gawker, Nylon, Long Reads, etc. Born and raised in Manhattan, attended Trinity College in Dublin, and also a bachelor's from Columbia University and a Master of Fine Arts from George Mason, and also did a bit of travel research. Got the award from Alan Chase International Writers Center. Talk more about that. He has a debut novel about the legendary but scandal-ridden story of August Sweeney, and collapses in the middle of service in the restaurant where he built his legacy, and by performed by doctor with strict conditions, everything just goes wrong. It's kind of like a comedy in a sense. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studio, someone in beautiful downtown DC, the amazing author, professor of creative writing, and the author of the book, The Death and Life of August Sweeney. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Sam Ashworth. Sam, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Good evening and everything else. That is a hell of an introduction, Mike.
Well, that's because you've got an impressive resume right there. You're an author, professor of creative writing at George Washington University. You created a class called The Working Writer. You're a regular contributor to various publications, including The Post, Nylon, Gawker, etc. You were born and raised in Manhattan, attended Trinity College in Dublin. Also got your bachelor's from Columbia, master's from George Mason. You have a debut novel about the legendary but scandal-ridden chef August Sweeney, who collapsed in the middle of service at his restaurant, where he built his legacy, and by performed by a doctor under strict conditions. The book is called The Death and Life of August Sweeney. Before getting all that, Sam, tell us how you first got started.
In writing or with his book?
Just everything in general. How'd you first get started? Way back, way back.
I got started when I was born at Roosevelt Hospital on 57th Street in 1985. We fast forward a couple of years and I learned how to read. That was a mistake. And that's where all the trouble started. And I never really learned how to count very well. So then I was sort of stuck with the whole reading and writing thing. And then by the time I was 14, I knew this is what I was going to do with my life. And I was lucky because my family is mostly in the arts. My mom's a composer. My dad's an architect. My brother is a violinist and a conductor, runs an opera company. My great uncle is a composer. My another uncle was in film. And it's kind of the family business, which meant that I grew up thinking of the arts as a job, not as a divine calling. Just it's a job. It's a thing that you do. It's a thing that you cultivate, a thing that you practice, and you keep getting better at. And I like to say that if I had come to my parents one day and said, I really feel like my calling is in the financial world, they would have said, we don't understand your lifestyle, but we love you and support you. So I was always going to do this. And in fact, where this book sort of starts is that when I was about 18 years old, I realized that I needed a trade. I was going to go to college, but I needed a trade. I needed something that was going to keep me going because I knew I wasn't going to be very good for a while. So I found out that when you're 18 years old in most states, you can be a bartender. You can't drink, but there's no laws against being a bartender, at least not in New York. And so I created a fake resume, lied my face off, supplied reference numbers that didn't exist, and started bartending, I think right after I turned 19.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I had always liked the restaurant industry. My father was a restaurant architect, and we'll come back to this, but all of the restaurant designs in this book are his. Every detail is taken from one of his restaurants. And I had started when I was 16 years old working in service. It was a crepe place. I made crepes on Columbus Avenue in New York, right off 72nd Street. Place no longer there. It died within months. But I spent the next almost 10 years on and off working in service. I worked in New York. I worked in Dublin and Ireland when I was living there. I worked in Boston. Um, and I loved it. It was exhausting and demolishing, but it was something that I learned to really enjoy. And ever since then, I have a deep love for the restaurant industry. I also never want to go back as long as I live. I am too old for that. But that's sort of where this started. And in fact, it was about 2012, and I was living in Boston. I was bartending in this place, and I was sitting at a sister bar with a coworker, and she started telling me about this book called Stiff: The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by a woman named Mary Roach.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Roach might be the most interesting writer in America. Like, you know, those things where the New York Times asks you to, like, who are the three people you'd like to have dinner with?
Uh-huh.
My answer is Mary Roach three times. And she started telling me about this book. I'd never heard of it. It is all about the things that are done with cadavers, like what we do with the human body after death. And out of my mouth comes the sentence, what if you could tell a person's life story by dissecting their body?
Mm,
And
interesting.
and I
I thought
want
it was done, I thought it was done on frogs, though. That was the thing, telling the story with frogs. That's what I was more thinking of.
I mean, that's what you do in a high school science class, right?
Mm,
But when you start in medical school, the first class you take is this class called gross anatomy. And what you do over the course of a semester is you dissect a donor body, right? It is a preserved body. It starts out all covered up, and you work methodically through it. You identify every organ, every muscle, every bone, and you learn to work with your hands. And that's how you do it. And one of my favorite things about this is that they uncover the body slowly, because it can be a very shocking thing to walk in and not only see a dead body, but also then be told you have to cut this thing up. It's a lot of people have trouble with it. Students faint kind of routinely, and I found out that what they do is they cover most of it. The face is all covered. The arms and hands are swathed, and you start with the thoracic cavity. That's
mm-hmm.
what you do first. So you're not doing a whole person. And this is relevant for what's coming next. Um, the last thing you do, you would imagine that it's the face, right? That's hard to imagine taking apart a face. It's not the face. It's the hands.
Oh my
The
goodness.
hands are the most intimate part of our bodies. They have this kind of magic. There's something about touching another person's hand that's very different from touching their face. And so that's the final thing that you do in this class. And so I came up with this idea in this moment. And my first instinct was it should be a medical student. My character should be a medical student. And she tells this person's story by going through that first semester of gross anatomy. And I went to an anatomy lab down in Pennsylvania. A friend snuck me in one night, and I didn't know who the body on the table would be, right? Because you have two sides of the story when you're building a book like this, right? Who's the dissector and who's the dissected?
Mm-hmm.
I had the dissector. I had her quickly. I had her name. I had what she looked like. It just came. I had a gun on the table until I walked into that anatomy lab pen. And first of all, I didn't faint. I thought I might. Didn't faint. I was fine. It was very beautiful, strangely enough. This room full of 40 bodies, sort of sea, because you register these things not only as people, but also as donations, right? They're gifts. So there's it's this treasure trove of information and memory and life. Then I got really hungry,
Mm.
like really, really hungry in a way that you're almost disturbed at how hungry you are, where you're like, I'm gonna go eat a whole animal, don't care which one.
Oh
And it
yeah,
turns
almost
out,
like cannibalism in a sense too. So
so well, let's go into that. Let's touch that third rail. Why not? There's the nice, convenient, and this apparently is a really common reaction that people have. And the nice and pleasant explanation for it is some people say that formalin, which is like the embalming fluid, it'll do that to you. I don't buy that. Some people will say that it's something about the body reacting to the presence of death by wanting to stimulate itself, by wanting to feed itself. I call BS. It's human tissue looks like meat. Sorry, we are meat. And realizing that was when I understood that the man on the table had to be a cook. This was someone who worked with meat.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
brief period in
Coincidence.
my head, I was like, maybe this is a butcher, but that seemed a little bit like on the nose, a little obvious. So I made him a cook. And now I was able to set the book half in the restaurant world and half in the lab. And the two sort of meshed together, right? They alternate chapters. And to like make this very, you asked a simple question, I gave you a very long story. Ultimately, what I realized was that a medical student wouldn't have the knowledge that I needed this character to have. Medical student is only learning. I needed a full bird doctor, which meant that I had to learn how to be a doctor.
Hmm.
I learned that I figured out that what I had to do was I had to learn everything I possibly could about autopsy pathology and human anatomy and learn how to think like one. And this
Hmm.
culminated in me getting very lucky. And a friend of mine was doing his residency in pathology. Um, and he happened to be working for maybe the one of the only doctors in the country who would have let a grad student slash journalist into his lab for 2 weeks. So I spent 2 weeks in an autopsy lab in Pittsburgh, learning how to do dissection. I wasn't allowed to cut anything for my own safety, not anyone else's. But I did everything else, and it was an extraordinary experience. And the moment I walked into that room, I knew everything I had written beforehand was useless. It was worthless. Everything I had gotten from television.
Okay.
I'd gotten from. We've all seen autopsies on TV. It's very popular.
Hmm. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
oh,
Like CSI, some of the medical shows, everything like that. Yes.
yeah, yeah. The whole spice rack of CSI, the family of NCIS, Bones, iZombie, Law and Order, House, The Good Doctor. You just keep going. Grey's Anatomy has two particularly terrible autopsy episodes. And everything that they've taught you on TV is wrong. Everything. It's nonsense. And we can dig into why that matters later. But the upshot for this was once I had that information, then I really saw that there was something important about this book, that there was that I really had something to say in a way I had never really experienced before. And from that point forward, like I knew exactly what this book had to be.
Hmm. Now, another thing that crossed my mind is have the thoughts of being a doctor or thoughts of working in a funeral home or your thoughts of being a chef, did that ever cross your mind along the way?
Not for a second. At no point in my life have I ever wanted to be a doctor or a chef, and certainly not work in a funeral home. No, I had no interest in it at all. I tend to approach fiction writing like an actor who gets to go do these crash courses in things. I the only thing I'm jealous of actors for is that if they're lucky, they get sent on, to go learn how to play the cello for 8 weeks and they come out and they can really do it. Or like Daniel Day-Lewis learning how to sew a whole like ball gown for his wife when he was making Phantom Thread. I love that kind of immersion.
Hmm. So, sort of
So
like
I tried to
method
bring it.
acting, right? Method acting.
It's very method. It's sort of the way that I know how to write. Because I have a very boring emotional inner life. I'm not a terribly interesting person. Uh, uh, um, I have no fertile trauma to draw on. So I write about work. I write about the jobs people do. I write about the lives other people lead, and I try to leech off of those a little bit.
Hmm. And of course, you had been writing for quite some time. Who are some of your favorite authors and writers in some of your favorite books growing up?
Oh, I mean, you know, the This is always the off-putting answer because people sort of back away when you say this, but like I got very into James Joyce when I was in high school. I still am. And in fact, I'm teaching a Joyce course in the fall for the first time. I'm really excited, and my students should be very scared because I care deeply about it. I genuinely love the man's work. And then there were also people like Don DeLillo. Um, Ian McEwan is probably the closest analog to this book. Um, I sort of ripped off his ethos a little bit. I learned that for the book Saturday, which is really the closest thing to this book, Saturday is about a day in the life of a neurosurgeon in London. Um, and to write it, McHugh had spent 2 years shadowing surgeons in London, like brain surgeons, learning everything he could. And it got to the point where he was actually able to talk people through the surgeries as he was observing them from the theater and letting people think he was a doctor. And I thought, okay, well, that's what I got to do. Uh, and in August Sweeney really clones that structure for the doctor. It is one day in her life, while it's cut together with 50 years in August's life. So the time signature keeps changing as the story goes along. There's also another woman named Wei-Ki Wong, wrote a book called Chemistry that had a huge impact on me a couple of years ago. And then there's a woman named Pat Barker, who is totally underappreciated in this country. Now that Hilary Mantel is dead, I think she's the greatest living writer of historical fiction. She wrote a famous series called the Regeneration Trilogy, which is about a PTSD hospital in Scotland during World War One.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you went through a lot of journey as well, too, going from New York to Dublin to Boston, all that. We're getting to more with Sam Ashworth and the death of life of August Sweeney with a guy for an appetite. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. SonicWeb Studios is the answer. SonicWeb Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon, paperback, and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has got great reviews. And even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forrest Riley, and Mayola. So grab your copy today. 4 goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 exquisite pains and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote, and as the time as a shepherd where it started, and complicate your turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also brought to you by the Sensei Swing. Eric Diamond was the latest release, All of Me, featuring the title track. I've got a new heartache, Bring Me Sunshine, Strike a Match, and more. Eric's a multi-award winning artist, inducted in numerous Hall of Fames, entertainer, album of the year, and release a new CD soon. Check out the amazing Eric Diamond today, ericdiamondmusic.com. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and all music platforms. Make sure you check it out today. Also, Mike Wagner's Show can be seen on MikeWagnerShow.com. Take us with you on any mobile device, also on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, also on iHeartRadio, Apple, and more. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, Wrinkles, and more. Cool merchandise and books. Check it out. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing author and professor of creative writing at George Washington University, Sam Ashworth, the Mike Wagner Show, at the life and death of August Sweeney. And before we get more in the book, tell us about your journey. Go from New York to Dublin to Boston. You seem to cover quite a lot of ground there.
Oh, I made a lot of terrible decisions. No. I mean, no, went to college in Dublin for 2 years. I was supposed to be there for four. Um, my parents uh, had a deal with me that I couldn't go to college west of the Mississippi.
Mm.
They didn't say anything about the Atlantic Ocean. And at some point in my head, I got this idea. Well, what if I went to school in Ireland? Because I was, again, I said James Joyce. I was fanatically into Irish literature, embarrassingly into Irish literature.
Hmm.
And the appeal of the school is that you only do one subject. Instead of having to go through the regular liberal arts thing that we have in the US, you just study one subject. You become an
Oh,
English major.
wow. That sounds pretty
That's it.
amazing. I
Yeah,
should have
you
done that a long time ago with Oxford, just one subject.
just one subject. And that was very appealing. And then a terrible thing happened, which was that we had a college advisor, and I told him about this idea, and he said the magic words, which were, "Well, no one's ever done that before."
Oh, yeah. We've heard that, been
And
there, done that.
that
And
was
many times.
all it took.
Uh-huh.
Was all it took. And I went, and after 2 years, I realized why no one had ever done that before, and I took off. Took off, came home, finished at Columbia, and that's where I met the woman who's not my wife. And after that, it's been sort of a case of following her. She went to grad school in Boston. I followed her to Boston. And after 2 years in Boston, I was like, this is worse than Dublin. Get me out of here. And we moved to DC. She works here, and we've been here about 12 years. So I lead a very settled, stable life. It's not terribly interesting anymore, but it is. I happen to like DC a lot. I have a deep love for this place, and I think we're going to be here for a long time.
Mhm. Especially for Washington, writing for the Washington Post and long reads and everything else. He also won an award, a travel research award as well.
Yeah, that was a big help for this. I guess this is the other thing. When I talked about going to work in the autopsy lab, the other thing I did was I went to work in a Michelin-starred kitchen. Um, and this happened because I was in grad school and they had launched a new international writer center called the Choose, named after Alan Choose, the Choose International Writer Center. Alan Choose, he was a professor there. He used to be the book reviewer for NPR, and then
Okay.
he died. And in his memory, they started this thing up. And the deal is, one of the things it does is it provides fellowships for two or three students each year to travel abroad to do some sort of research for whatever book they're working on. And so I was one of the first two that
Nice.
they sent. And I got sent to France, where I had partially grown up, and to a little town in the south where I had enough of a network that I convinced somebody to convince somebody to let me come and be what's called a stagiaire in her kitchen. She had a Michelin star. A stagiaire can be different things. Professional cooks can do stages, but also it's often done by like very early starting cooks. It's usually unpaid. It's a short-term position at a restaurant. It can be a couple of weeks, it can be a couple of months, but you're not a full-term employee there. You're there to learn. And so went there to learn what the life of a prep cook was like. And what I found out was that the life of a prep cook sucks. And
Really? How is
I
that? I think so. One of my kids was considering something like that. Maybe we should know her about it.
Well, I know, you know what? Here's what I'll tell you about that. For me, I knew I was never going to be a cook. This was not going to be my job. I was there to do research. I was there to learn what I needed to know about what this job felt like on a physical level. And after a week or so, after a week of plucking cilantro from its stems for 3 hours, or uh, spending hours and hours cleaning squid, which is really fiddly, or deveining shrimp, or deboning fish, or slicing bread into tiny little slivers,
Or
and not
like
cooking
like
anything.
wafers and all that. Right. Uh-huh.
Like wafers, or concassing tomatoes, which is where you take all the water and the seeds out of the tomato and break them down. Um, After a week or so of that, I was like, okay, I got the point. I know what this is, but that kind of work, if you are interested in cooking, is essential. You have to do it that way. You can only do it that way. I know a lot of cooks, like professional chefs, some even very, very well-known chefs, who are they hate hiring kids at a culinary school because the kids in culinary school they'll learn how to cut one or two onions beautifully, but they need people who can cut 100 and get
So,
through it
so
and
it's like
stay on your
speed they're
feet.
going for.
But it's not just speed; it's speed and precision. There's a
Yeah,
part
that.
in the book actually where August, my chef, goes to France. He does what I did, so I used the whole thing. I put it in the book. August starts out as like a rough and tumble kid from New York. He's like working at a sort of like this diner type place in Queens, and he loves it. But then he discovers that this whole world of French cuisine and better cuisine exists, and this is back in like the 80s. And he decides he wants to go to France. He wants to see if he can learn how to do this stuff, and he goes, and he just basically does what I did, and I modeled that whole thing after him. And what he learns is that in order to succeed at this, you have to do each thing so many times over and over and over that your body will not let you screw that thing up, even if you try. And so at one point, he tries to like go for speed. He tries to cut an onion in front of the head chef, and he just beats it to death because he's just hammering it with a knife. And the juices are leaking everywhere. It's mush. And then very patiently, the chef takes him and shows him how to properly what we call brunoise an onion, which is a very tight dice that I had never known how to do, and he didn't know how to do. And
Huh.
it's these tiny things like this, and you do one of these things after another for years until you become a cook. And I'll tell you a story. I launched this book in New York um, about 2 weeks ago, and the conversation partner I had was Tom Colicchio, who was the head chef, the head judge on Top Chef. I've been watching this guy for 20 years, and one of the things he told me before we went on stage together was he's having trouble hiring people
Really?
because it's finding these people like that people don't want to put in that kind of work anymore for the kind of cooking he needs, for the kind of precision and efficiency and excellence that a cook like him requires. It's really hard to find anyone with the tenacity to do it. And I'm not going to chalk that up to anything generational.
Mm. I
Um,
was just going to mention that 40 years ago, people were willing to do it, even 60. But today, it's like today's kids. I'm saying the same thing. Even 10 or 20 years ago, it's somewhat generational. It is really hard to find some help. They really be like, watching, making YouTube videos, be on Instagram and all that, instead of getting out there, actually really, really learning the craft and something you could like just take it with you for the rest of your life.
yes, but there's also a flip side to that, which is something I really go into in the book, which is that 40, 50 years ago, if you went to work in a kitchen, God help you if you were anything other than a white man. And what I mean by that is the restaurants of 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, right? America really starts thinking about restaurants and cuisine with around the time Anthony Bourdain starts publishing books. So it's about 2000. It's really only been 25 years. Before that, we had people like Julia Child and James Beard, but they really are home cooks. They're not glorifying the restaurants. So if you want good restaurants, you basically have French food, and that's it. A couple of super elite French restaurants. Everything runs off the French brigade system. Um, you're not going to. There's a tiny handful of elite restaurants of other kinds, but very, very few. Even Italian, you're gonna have trouble. And then things start to happen in other cuisines. You start to see better Asian food. You start to see better Italian food. Most of this is still cooked by white men, right? One of the biggest exponents of Asian food in New York was a guy named Rocco DiSpirito back in like the 2000s. And what happens is you go into these kitchens and they're tyrannical, dictatorial places. I worked at these restaurants. I worked for psychopaths, multiple psychopaths. Um, and those people show up in the book in various forms. But there was this sense that in order to get ahead, it wasn't just about doing all this, repetitive manual labor and getting it down. You also had to be ready to absorb soul crushing amounts of abuse, viciousness. You had to be prepared to have things thrown at you at your head, right? And the way that people in kitchens talk, they didn't talk, they screamed. And this was glorified for a long time. This is how we got Gordon Ramsay as a celebrity. Gordon Ramsay
Oh
is
my
maybe
gosh.
the
Yeah.
most toxic character we've got.
Oh God. I was
He still
watching
has a
some of
career.
those shows. Oh my goodness.
They're
Makes them say
horrible.
shut.
They're great television, right? They're great television because it's not happening to you. You want to see a British man scream at somebody and put her head between two pieces of bread and call her an idiot sandwich. But 10 years ago, that's still how it's supposed to be. And then two things happen. One, Me Too kicks off. And in no world was the Me Too movement more impactful and necessary than in the restaurant world. It was incredibly important because those chefs acted with total impunity. And you have these things, kitchens are closed environments. Everything is word of mouth. You don't see the people making your food very often. You don't see what's going on with it. And you also don't see that they're very badly paid most of the time. And so you have people like Mario Batali who get away with groping everybody in sight, and the people who did even worse things than Batali, um, because that dictatorial screaming was associated with genius and quality. And that's just the phrase was always, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Right.
Well, the heat broke so many people that should have been in kitchens, that had great talent, that had great skill. They just weren't set up to spend their lives getting psychologically ground into dust. And one of the things that I saw happen as I was writing this book was this tremendous evolution in how restaurants are run, in what people are willing to accept. And there's been a sea change for restaurants in that sense. But the other thing that happened to them was COVID. COVID permanently transformed the industry, permanently. Mm-hmm. And it's still recovering. Like it's been, 5 years on. They're still staggering, especially with things like PPP loans getting cut off. So a lot of restaurants are seriously in danger, more than they ever have been. Mm-hmm. So the book is a love letter to that industry. It really is, in all of its faults.
And also, people's appetites changed throughout the years. People's taste throughout the years, of course.
Oh, thank God.
Yes, unbelievable. Some of the things they used to love, and it's like now I can't stand. They change the food, change the recipe, because of the whole thing with gluten. It's not organic, this, that, everything's got to go through FDA and everything. And the guy, August Sweeney, really had an appetite for success. And being carved up by one doctor. We'll get that in just 1 minute. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of The Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author, Me and Wilson's in Missing. Also by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, now on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and the Sensei Swaying Eric Diamond with All of Me, now on ericdiamondmusic.com. Back to multi-talent Sam Ashworth of the death and life of August Sweeney after this timeout. We're back with author Sam Ashworth of The Death and Life of August Sweeney here on the Mike Wagner Show. This guy had an appetite for success, but then when it came down to it, that how it happened, that he passes on everything. He wanted a specific doctor to come in and do an autopsy with specific instructions. And tell us more about that.
Sure. One of my favorite, most important things to understand about this book is that when you hear the word autopsy, you usually imagine CSI or NCIS or something. And this is not that kind of autopsy. This is called a clinical autopsy. These are the kinds done in hospitals for cases of natural death. And it's an extremely important kind, but this is a case, this is not a murder mystery. Everybody saw August Sweeney die, and everybody, including August Sweeney, knew that August Sweeney was going to die because he's 6'9", 400 pounds. He's eaten a pound of butter and a bottle of wine every day for the last, 20 odd years. He's a gargantuan Falstaffian figure. And in his size, he draws people into his orbit, right? He creates his own gravity because I wanted him to be the best time you've ever had, right? When you are with August, nothing is ever boring. And he has this lust for life, this appetite for excess, this part of him that just says, I want, I want, I want. And if you ask him what he wants, he's just going to say, I want more. That's who he is.
More. I know what you
Just want
mean. More,
more,
more, more. Like eat,
more,
eat,
more,
eat,
more.
everything like that. Makes you think of Andre the Giant, 6'9", 400 pounds. Makes me think of that.
Yes, he's a little bit Andre the Giant sized, and Andre the Giant consumed incredible amounts of alcohol, but that's also because he was in a ton of pain for most of his life. That what August does is August is aware he's not going to make it, and this is sort of toward the end of the book, but he knows from the very beginning he's going to, and so he starts to make plans. But in the typical August sense, these plans are really haphazard and not well thought out at all. But to give some part of the book away, there is this there's this one night he meets this woman, and she's a young medical student. And she is the daughter of this Chinese couple who own a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. It's not a low main and General Tso's chicken slinging place. This is a true Shanghainese restaurant, one of the very few that existed at that time in New York. It's based on a real place called Wu Yang Ye, which is a terrific restaurant. It's still there. And what one night he goes in, it's his favorite Chinese restaurant. He knows everybody there, but he doesn't know her. And one night they meet. We found this about halfway through the book. So I'm totally spoiling this, but I'm okay with that.
You don't need to, but the point I get to that is where he meets this doctor Maya Zhu, and basically that becomes a human scalpel. So it's like, why do you choose her to do the autopsy, and what were the specific instructions to having this autopsy done? Maybe a few of the specifics, and why did
Well,
you
the
choose her?
specifics are he requires that she teach his body, that she use him as a teaching body, that he makes a donation to the hospital, but like part of the stipulations that it has to be her and it has to be a teaching body. And August is extremely wealthy because he becomes this gargantuan chef via the Food Network. And the book tells the whole history of the Food Network and the growth of the celebrity chef. It's a ton of fun. But the night he goes to this restaurant, he's drunk. It's late. She's a medical student. And they start talking because he knows that she is the daughter of the man who runs this restaurant. And he has the utmost respect for her father. She has no idea who this man is, which is very surprising to him because he's already famous by this point, but she's never seen the Food Network. She doesn't care. And what she does is she tells him what she does. She's going to be an autopsist. And he starts to talk to her about it. And he asks, well, what are you going to see in me? What can you see in my body? And she looks him in the face and she says, you're going to die. She sees these telltale signs of excess cholesterol all over his face. She sees clubbing in his fingers. And she's like, I'm a med student. I don't know this for sure, but you're giving off all the signs. And she's like, in her head, she says, I've always wanted to say this to somebody. And she says, you're going to die. And that's it. That's sort of the whole scene. And she forgets it, right? It's not a big part of her life. He never does.
Mm-hmm.
Never does. And years and years and years later, when he's making a will, he's like, there's this girl. Her dad owns this restaurant. And he's telling this to his lawyer. He says, you get her. She knows him. And of course, he doesn't tell her any of this. She has no idea who he is at first until some people recognize him in the lab because now she has these students. She does not want to teach. She wants to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And what this story is I started to ask myself, could you bring two people together when one of them is dead? Can there be life left in that body? How can we learn to see that life in the body after the person inside is gone? And what would it be like if we knew how to look for that life? How would our relationship with death change? And my relationship with death has profoundly changed from writing this book. I would like the biggest pitch I give for this book is it will ease your fear of death. That's what it does. Because it sits with it. It doesn't make it scary. It doesn't make it graphic or morbid. This is a funny book. This is an exciting book. I made it as exciting and comic as possible because of the thing it's about. And in the end of it, it's a love story. It's just bad timing.
Okay. And I think that pretty much sums up right there. What where can we find your book at The Death and Life of August Sweeney at?
You can find it anywhere online. You can some bookstores will have it on shelves. You can order it from bookstores. Please do. Please order it from your local library. That is one of the best things you can do for an author. Every author wants to have their book on library shelves so it can keep being passed around and people can keep reading it. But you can definitely find it on bookshop.org, Amazon.com, or your local bookstore if it doesn't have it on the shelves. Ask them to order it for you.
And what's your website? How do people get a hold of you?
They can go to www.samuelashworth.com. They can find me on Blue Sky, same name, or Instagram at samuel.b.ashworth. But the best way, and one thing I would say here is, I, more than anything else, want this book to be taught in medical schools, and it's starting to get some traction there. It deals with something that medical schools do not teach and that many doctors suffer for want of knowing. And if you are in any way affiliated with a medical school, if you're a student or a teacher or an administrator of any kind, reach out to me. I have a whole way of helping people with it. It would mean a huge amount to support medical students and future doctors and nurses as well, understanding what the autopsy is, because the reality is most doctors don't know.
That is rather interesting. I think that drives the point home as well. We're here with the amazing Sam Ashworth of The Death and Life of August Sweeney here on the Mike Wedner Show. Just a few more things, Sam. What else can we expect in 2025 and beyond?
Working on a movie right now, which hopefully should be able to announce soon. And I've just figured out what the next novel is. And I'm not saying it out loud yet because I'm going to mess it up. But I'm very excited. It's sort of just kicked into my head. And I think it's going to be a lot easier. I think it's going to involve a whole lot less human and animal blood than this book did. There were definitely liters of blood that went into this book.
Okay. All right. Well, certainly check that out and keep us up to date on that, Sam. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
My wife.
Okay.
It's the only one I write for. She's the one who reads everything first. And if she doesn't say the words, I love it, no one else ever sees it. I will keep doing it until she says it.
I think that's a great bar to set as well. What's the best advice you can get to anybody at this point?
Wants to be a writer?
Or just in general?
What I say to young writers now, it's taken me a long time to learn, but it's important. I tell them that patience is a weapon. Patience is a really hard thing to deal with when you're a writer of any kind, emerging or not, young or old even more so. Wherever you are in your career, patience can be very, very hard because, especially as an artist of any kind, you are waiting to become the thing that you want to be, but you need the validation of other people, or you think you need the validation of other people to be that thing, right? You don't feel like a writer until someone's published you. You don't feel like an author until you have a book out. You don't feel like an actor until you've been cast in a role. So the rush that we feel to achieve the thing that we want can lead us to make really bad choices. It can lead us to move too fast, say yes to the first things that come along, not refine our work like we need to. And this describes my career, right? Making those mistakes, being in a rush, and telling an emerging artist to be patient is like telling a person having a panic attack to calm down. It's not going to help. You can't just say, be patient, be patient. No, I can't. But if you can think of patience like it is a weapon, a tool to be used, a martial art that you have to actually build your strength in and your endurance in, then when those decisions come up, you're not sure if they're the right one, whether maybe it's an agent, the first agent who comes along, maybe it's being impatient with the submission process and just wanting to rush it out. Maybe you're not ready to edit something as much as it needs to be. If you can tell yourself in your head, patience is a weapon, you can use it to cut through that anxiety. And if artists can learn to do that early in their careers, they will, in the end, get there much faster.
And I think that's an excellent point you just made, Sam. That was an excellent point. We're here with the amazing Sam Ashworth of The Death and Life of August Sweeney here on the Mike Wagner Show. Sam, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live have you back. And once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
All right. It's called The Death and Life of August Sweeney. It's out from Santa Fe Writers Project. You can find it on Amazon, bookshop.org. Bookshop.org is especially wonderful because they kick money back to bookstores. You can order from your local bookstores, and you can order from your local library. Best place to contact me is through my website at www.samuelashworth.com, or follow me on Blue Sky, same name, or on Instagram at samuel.b.ashworth. Mike, thank you so much.
And thank you as well. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live have you back. We wish all best. And Sam, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Take it easy.